Hello and welcome to this video on 12 ways for a teacher to save time. So I'm a firm believer in the fact that you can be an outstanding teacher and work only 40 hours a week. That's what I do in my actual job as a teacher. I only put in 40 hours a week, that's all I've ever done, and I am definitely an outstanding teacher. Of course, I put in more hours for my other roles. I'd spend more time at school working as the head of English, so I'm not going to say that you can be the head of department and an outstanding teacher in 40 hours a week. And I put in a lot of hours on YouTube and doing the ebook and that sort of thing. But the only reason that I can do YouTube and the ebook and even be a head of faculty is because I know how to work very efficiently and effectively as a teacher. And in this video I'm going to share 12 simple techniques to save time, because I think time is the biggest thing that holds teachers back. So let me go through 12 points, and some of them you might already be doing, some of them you might disagree with, but hopefully amongst the 12 you'll find some really useful tips. Number one is to photocopy in bulk at non-peak times. In the first year of my career, I realised that I was spending a lot of time stood at the photocopier in queues of people, and that I was going back there again and again and again. And it took me about a year to think, okay, if I plan in advance, even just a few days in advance, and know all of the resources that I'm going to need to photocopy, I'm going to take all of those and photocopy them in one big go. So I'm only going to visit the photocopier once a week, let's say. And I'm going to visit it at non-peak times. So you know what I mean. There are times in your school when it's just heaving on the photocopiers, and sometimes when it's not. So I'm going to work out when it's hardly ever used. That's when I'm going to go there. I'm going to go there once a week, do all my photocopying, and that's it. And that is such a simple tip, but I guarantee you that saves me at least an hour a week of just wandering back and forth to the photocopiers, standing in queues, getting bored and frustrated. So that's my first simple tip. Moving quickly on to number two, because time is of the essence. Work through break and lunch times. Bit of a controversial one this, but at 11 o'clock and 1:20 I just carry on working. I always have done for the last 8 years as a teacher, and the reason I do that is very simple. I get 20 minutes at break, 40 minutes at lunch. That gives me an hour to work. Now I use that hour to work, so that is an hour then that I don't have to give up in the evenings or the weekends when I'm with my family. And although it can sometimes be tough to work through break and lunch, I would much rather push myself to work through those times than to have to make up that time in the evening when I can't be with my wife, or at the weekend when I can't play with my children. So you're going to have to make up that hour somewhere, and it makes sense to me to sit at your computer with your sandwiches and carry on working. Now you have to have quite good stamina for that, and there are certain things you can do, like make sure that the work you do at break and lunch is not the most taxing work you have to do that day. So for example, going back to number one, you're photocopying. It might be that not many people do their photocopying at break and lunch, and that's a great time to do it. So it's not like you're really working in a mentally taxing way, but you're still getting work done. That's a massive part of the success that I've had in the classroom. And moving on to number three. Number three is don't cut stuff up. Oh my goodness, this is just something I always see trainee teachers, PGCEs doing, and you've just got to not do it. Do not have lessons where you cut up hundreds of little bits of paper and they have to put them in a certain order, or stick them on the sheet, or make a timeline, or whatever it is. Don't do those kind of lessons. Come at the learning objective in a different way. Never have a lesson where you're cutting things up into little pieces, putting them in envelopes, putting an elastic band around them, trying to get them laminated. It's just not effective or efficient use of time. For the actual end result, the objective can be achieved in so many other ways. And I'll do videos on this in the future, but you know, it's not effective. And you collect them in at the end, and some of them are screwed up, so you have to throw that lot away, or you know, you just end up throwing them all away. So you spend so long doing all this cutting up, and it's ridiculous. It really is just something. If you want to save time, if your objective is watching this video. I'm a teacher and I want to save time. Please do me a favour and never again have a lesson where you are as a teacher cutting lots of things up for students to put into like an order or to stick in a grid or something like that. It just isn't efficient use of time. Bit passionate about that one. Number 4, okay, use marking grids for all of your marking. This is a video that I did on my channel. I'll put a link in the description about using marking grids. And basically you plan these grids beforehand, you give them to the kids so they know what they're being marked on, and you mark with these grids. And basically what it does is it helps you to really focus on your marking, because you're just looking for the things in the grid. The minute you find them, you can tick yes. If you don't find one, you can make that your target. It's an easy way of marking. I really do recommend it. Moving on to number 5 then, flip your classroom. The days of flipping classrooms are upon us, and basically what a flipped classroom is where you send kids away and for homework they do the learning. They learn stuff about, let's just say, a poem. They'll learn all about the poem, and then when they come back to class they apply what they've learned for homework into a piece of work or a task or a question. Now the really good thing is, and I'll just use myself as an example, on my YouTube channel I've got a couple of hundred videos which include absolutely phenomenal A-star analysis of the set poems for the relationships cluster. So for example, if you take my poem, my analysis of Sonnet 116, it took me about 8 hours to prep that analysis, and it is to the absolute A-star level. So why would you waste your time prepping a lesson on Sonnet 116 when you can go and watch my video with the kids, or get the kids to watch it for homework, and then when they come back to the lesson, give them an exam question on it and break down how you'd approach the question. But don't spend your time doing things that have already been done. I'm just one example, but at youtube.com/Mr. Bruff, there's over 200 videos. At MrBruff.com, there's my ebook. It's about 100 pages of revision guide, sample answers for foundation and higher tier. On iTunes.com, I've got a podcast, the Mr. Bruff Walk to School podcast. You know, all of these things can be used by you and set as homework tasks, or even used in class occasionally, and that's just me. So flip your classroom, look for good resources out there, and that will save you masses of time. Number 6, which because of my choice of pocket watch is not there, but number 6 is to structure your week wisely. Imagine this is my typical plan for next week, and I think this is something people don't do, but I want you to think about the week ahead in terms of all of the different classes that you're teaching. So let's just say with year 11 next week I was going to teach them section A and B of the exam, and I was going to give them a mock paper and I was going to mark it. Okay, then for year 10 they were going to complete their controlled assessment. I've got their parents' evening in 2 weeks, so I need to quickly mark that and get them give feedback for that, you know, in time for parents' evening. Year 7, they're moving on to the Gothic, and I was going to do a series of, you know, standing at the front lecture style lessons where I talk them through the various elements of the Gothic. Year 8 are doing a speaking and listening assessment, a kind of debate, and I was going to show them some clips on YouTube of debates and get them to work out why they're good, and then give them their topics and they can research those and get on with their debates and peer assess and all the rest of it. Well, the problem with that is that I have got a very, sorry to make you dizzy by going back and forward here, I've planned myself here a week that is incredibly marking heavy with the year 11 and the year 10. Oh, now I've just really messed it up. As you can see, the year 11 is going to be basically me marking 30 mock papers, and the year 10 is going to be me marking 30 controlled assessments. And there is a level of sustainability in the role of a teacher which you just can't reach. And I would say that if you've got a week where you're marking 60 pieces of Key Stage 4 work, you need to think about it in a different way. So, excuse me while I whiz through the animation and make you dizzy again. How about having the week like this, a much more balanced week? With year 11, I'm just going to teach them about section B of the exam, and then I'm going to give them one mock question, but rather than me marking them, I'm going to get them to peer assess each other's answers using the marking grids. I'm going to explain that next week I will set them a question which I will be marking, because of course next week I won't have the year 10 work to mark. So I'm taking away the idea that this week I'm going to be marking 30 pieces of mock exam work, and I'm saying that they're going to mark each other's in preparation for the same task next week. So this week I will end up just marking the year 10s, which still remains here because that's, one that I can't move or maneuver or wiggle around at all. It's absolutely essential that it gets done quickly in time for parents' evening. So this week I'm now just marking 30 pieces of controlled assessment rather than 60 pieces of Key Stage 4 work, which would have included that year 11 work. Now, the year 7 session on the Gothic, I'm going to rearrange it, and I think I'm going to do a flipped classroom where I might find some stuff online for them to look at, or I might book a lesson into the library and we go and research the Gothic in there and come back and it's, we've learned about the Gothic without me having to prep, a whole week of in-depth lectures about it. The year 8 speaking and listening assessment can then go on as it was planned, and I think that ends up as a much more sustainable week. So it's just a technique to look at your week in terms of all the groups you've got. And if you do endpoint planning, and I've got a video on that on my YouTube channel, then you can map out for the half term ahead when your hot spots are, when your marking spots are. If you get really good at this, which is what I do all the time, you can actually have it so when your year 11s are spending, my year 10s here have got 3 hours on their controlled assessment in silence, I'm actually sat there with my, year 11 questions from last week or homeworks, and I'm marking them. And you can map out the structure of your weeks and how your classes interact with each other and how you use time because of that. Okay, number 7, plan in the shower, etc. Oh, sorry, a bit of an image problem here. Basically, the point is that I do all of my planning in my head. So I think it all up. I think about where we are in the unit, what the objectives need to be, what skills my class need, and then I put all that down into an endpoint plan. Check out my video on that. And then in the shower each morning, I might be in the shower for 10 minutes. Well, over a week, that's nearly an hour. I've put the toilet, I don't want to be crude, but use all of your time, the shower, the toilet, the car journey into school and out from school, to think about your lessons, what you're going to do, what resources you're going to need to make, if there are better ways of doing it, what the needs are in your group. So I basically, by the time I'm in school, I know everything I'm doing, and then I just actually spend my physical time in school teaching and making my resources, paying my one visit to the photocopier, etc. Now that doesn't mean that and this is an important point, I'm always a few days ahead of myself. I'm not driving into school thinking about what I'm doing that day. The other day I rushed off to the photocopier at break time and someone said to me, oh, you in a manic in a rush for next lesson. I said, no, I'm planning, this is photocopying for 3 days away. I'm just, using my time wisely. But so I'm not saying that you should be last minute planning, but you should plan all of this stuff in this kind of dead time, like when you're having a shower. I mean, who wants to hear you sing anyway? For advance, be a few days ahead of yourself. Okay, number 8 is quite a simple one. Don't overcomplicate your lessons. I think this is something that is an issue really much more for NQTs and PGCE students, that kind of thing, that you try to do too much in your lessons. Don't. The objective of a lesson should be that the students learn something that they didn't know before. One thing is fine. And this is the way I structure all of my lessons, and I will do a video on lesson structure soon. 10 minutes where I explain something, I teach the class, I talk to them, I lecture the class, if you like, about something that they need to know, a new skill, a new topic. 30 minutes where they then apply that learning to a piece of work. It might be cooperatively, that might include some questioning. I'm circulating around the room, meddling, questioning, whatever, but it's not listen to teacher at the front time. 15 minutes then for them to maybe peer assess or mix up the task a bit, and 5 minutes at the end to kind of wind down, pack away, and consolidate what they've learned. Very simple timing structure. All of my lessons are structured like that. You might think that's not enough, 10 minutes, but if you have 4 lessons in a week with year 10, and each lesson for 10 minutes, and they know the structure, so they listen better because they know they're only expected to listen quietly for 10 minutes. And you've taught them for 10 minutes on Monday, 10 on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. By the end of the week, in that 40 minutes of listening, they've learnt so much, which they've then applied in the other parts of the lesson. It's great. Okay, moving on then to number 9. Don't overcomplicate your PowerPoints or Prezis or any of your resources, in fact. So basically the idea here, represented very visually, is if there is something that you can communicate verbally to your class and students, don't put it in a PowerPoint or a Prezi. So this slide that you're looking at right now is a great example. Now before I go on, I must say I always, in my videos, don't practice what I preach here, but obviously my videos on YouTube are for a visual audience, and I'm trying to kind of, teach the world, so that's slightly different. But if you're teaching a class, because we all do it 22 hours a week, you don't have time to have every instruction, every direction, every task, everything you want the class to do to be put onto your PowerPoint or Prezi. So, for example, this slide that you are looking at right now did not need these pictures. I could have just said, in fact it didn't need that, I could have just said, the next thing I want you to do is to not overcomplicate your PowerPoints or Prezis with slides that contain information you could quite easily just communicate verbally. And that would have been it. But what I did was I wrote this title here, Don't Overcomplicate PowerPoints or Prezis, and then I thought, right, I'm going to put a picture in of the idea of someone speaking. So I did a Google image search for the word verbal, but it brought up a picture of a person, obviously called verbal. So I thought, well, that's not what I want. So I put in speaking, and I found this picture and put it in. Then I Googled PowerPoint and found this picture and put it in, but it wasn't quite the size I wanted it to be. I wanted it to kind of match the size of this. So I started trying to adjust the size, but for some reason it wasn't adjusting. Still don't know what that was. Ended up leaving it. Then I thought I'll put a little tick and a cross in, make it really visual, which one's good and bad. So I Googled tick and got the tick that bites your leg and sticks in you and sucks blood. So I thought, how can I get it? So I Googled tick correct, and this came up. I thought, right, good. I put it in, but for some reason it went behind the picture, so I had to find it and click bring to front. And then over here with the cross, I put in cross, and up came the cross that Jesus died on. And I thought, how can I get this right, the type of cross I want? So I put cross incorrect. And then I found a number of crosses, but I kind of wanted one that matched the style of this one, and in the end decided not to. But this one doesn't match this one. It hasn't got a background, and it's white on a coloured background that's coloured on a white background. And the point I'm making is all of the time it took me, it was probably like 5 or 6 minutes then to find these images when they weren't actually necessary, when I could have just communicated it verbally. Now, in my video on YouTube, that's fine because YouTube is a very visual way of communicating. But if you're teaching 22 hours of lessons a week, and all of those lessons have these really elaborate PowerPoints which are really kind of visual, and every instruction is written down, and if you want them to draw a grid in their book, you've drawn it on the board in kind of a Word document and all the rest of it, it's just going to kill you. So try to simplify your resources by putting anything that you could communicate verbally not on there, basically. Simple. Okay, number 10, nearly done now. Number 10 is all about never write flowery emotional comments on students' work. This kind of links to the marking grids, but studies show that the flowery verbose comments that some teachers like to write actually have no positive impact on the students. So if you write something like, oh Sarah, I really enjoyed reading this story, the bit about the rabbit was so fascinating, I've always loved rabbits, you're so creative, I really think you could be a famous writer someday. You can write all that kind of stuff, and it hasn't actually told them the grade they've got or how to improve or how they've done against your success criteria. Now, don't write any of that. Never ever again from this day write that kind of thing on a student's work or in their book, and you'll save yourself a lot of time. And you know what? You can still communicate that information verbally. You can just say to them when you give the work back or when you see them in the corridor or whatever, Sarah, I really enjoyed that story. It was really good, very good. You're very creative. But don't write it down. It's just bad use of energy and time. Okay, number 11 is get on top of behaviour right away. I think I've seen some bad examples of this and I've done some myself in the early years, where you take on a class and you can see right away where the difficulties are going to be, but you try to work it out, and you give them the benefit of the doubt. Get on top of the behaviour right away, okay? You're going to keep this class for a minimum of 1 year. And if they're like a year 10 class, you might have them for 2 years. So it benefits you in the very early stages to get right on top of the behaviour, to get on the phone as represented in the picture and phone home, to talk to parents, to establish those links and develop those relationships right away early on. And that isn't necessarily in a negative way. If the student's done something good, phone home and tell the parent. Develop that relationship, work out with each student what it is that gets them to behave well, because I think there is something that will get every student to behave well. It might be the threat of phoning home works for one, but another one doesn't care, so it's about phoning their head of guild, or it's about praise, and they will actually respond very well to praise or responsibility, or they don't want you to sit them away from their friends, or they don't want a detention. Every student has something that will get them to behave, or 99% of students in my experience. So work on that very, very early on, because else what you'll do is you'll spend the whole year struggling with a group, and it's just not time efficient. You put the hours in at the beginning, at the early stages, to establish your expectations and to work out what's going to work with who. And that brings us to number 12, the final one in my video, which is travel to and from work at the most efficient times. Okay, so I live on Dartmoor, and if I leave my house at 7:25 in the morning, I will get to work just before 8. So it will take me about half an hour to get to work. If I leave for work at 7:40 in the morning, it will take me 3/4 of an hour to get to work, because I hit this big traffic jam. Not quite as bad as on the picture, but you know what I'm saying. On the way home, it's very hard to work out on the way home, actually, but one thing I can say is there's no point in me shooting out the door at 3:15 and trying to get out early, because all of the parents' cars are there picking up their kids. There's kids everywhere. You get in a traffic jam just down the road where the little primary school is. What am I saying? Work out the most efficient times to come to work and to leave work. You might not want to get to work at 7:30 in the morning, but if that gives you then half an hour in school that you would have just spent half an hour extra in the car because of traffic, it's a more efficient way of working. If you're at work at 7:30 in the morning or 7:45, that extra 20-30 minutes in the morning, you can get a lot done. That might be your photocopying slot. And actually, you've not lost any time. You've had to get up earlier, but you've saved time because you would have spent extra time in the car anyway. So that is my video on 12 ways to save time as a teacher. I've been pretty abrupt and harsh in it, but I really do want to say that if you do want to be an efficient teacher who can be outstanding, all your planning, your marking, your teaching, your feedback and everything in 40 hours a week, then you do need to be really kind of militant in how you use your time. And the 12 steps that I've shown in this video, coupled with my other videos on endpoint planning and the marking grids and everything, should really help you to save time. I'd be fascinated if you leave a comment in the section of the video. Let me know if you found this useful. I'm on Twitter at Mr. Bruff English if you want to talk more. And all of this will eventually build up to a nice ebook for teachers. So please subscribe to this channel. Talk about time efficiency. To make this video that you're looking at now has taken me a good couple of hours. So please do subscribe to this channel. If I get a number of extra subscribers, it'll inspire me to do another one, because I only like to use my time efficiently. If I'm not getting views and subscribers on this new teacher channel, then I just won't make the videos. Anyway, I hope this helps you to save time, and I shall see you soon.